First Book of Moses, Bereshith, Chapter 1, First Creation by Elohim. In the former time periods, as a powerful sign of working, chief son and heir Elohim filled with choice things, behold, as a sign Shemayim, the place of the names, and behold, as a sign Aratz, the chief place of running. But observe how Aratz was unorganized and empty, and Sheshach rose up from the deep waters, went up to its face, but the Ruach Elohim, as a wall of protection, moved violently upon the surface of the waters. Elohim then declared, light he will exist, and light he will exist. And Elohim gazed upon that beautiful light, and Elohim made distinctive the light from the darkness. And to the light Elohim called out the name Ya'un, and to the darkness he called out the name Leah Laha. This was the close and the dawn of the first age.
The Ketub Abarayath, or the Paleo-Hebrew, is a language over 5,000 years old. It chronicles a story branching forth from ancient time. His story, Yahweh. Walk into his story. Read the Paleo-Hebrew scriptures.
Quick story, guys. Coming to you from London town right now. You could see I'm in a new room. When I come to you guys next week, I'll be in a completely new room, and I'll be in Europe for the next several months. So you know that I'm going to have a lot of stories to give. But quick story. Last week, I was in Spain. I was in Portugal and Spain, and they were 6 hours ahead of East Coast time, which I assumed that the UK was too. In fact, in the past, when I've checked, they were in fact 6 hours ahead. And so I scheduled this for now. I'm actually 3 minutes early. I thought I was trying to calculate according to East Coast time, and then I saw in the chat here that there were a lot of people waiting. Like, where is Noel? What's wrong? Why isn't he on? And so sorry, guys. Yeah, starting about 57 minutes late, but glad to be here. And yeah, just quickly tell you guys that if you've been wondering why I've been silent for the last almost 3 weeks, it's because of travel. And my family and I, we've done this before, but we've been planning this trip for years now, at least a year and a half. And we jumped on a train, Charleston. We went down to Miami, jumped on a big boat, and went across the Atlantic Pond for a couple weeks, landed in Europe, in Portugal, and then made it up to the UK finally. And the reason I'm here is for boots on the ground research. I just realized that I need to silence my Discord group because it's going to keep beeping at me this entire time. There we go. So I'm not going to be talking about that tonight. We're going into you've tuned in because we're going to be talking about the Gospel of Matthew and Paleo-Hebrew. And in case you're like, what? Like that? Yeah, this is a book we publish at the Unexpected Cosmology. There's a link below. You can go check it out. And of course, our goal here over the next 10, 15 years, Yah willing, is to translate the entire Bible, including extra biblical canon books, if through the Paleo-Hebrew. If you have questions about this, we also have videos. We describe the process and so on and so forth. And I think you guys are going to really enjoy the study tonight. This is going to be a line for line study through the entire Hebrew Gospel of Matthew. I don't know how many weeks this is going to take. Could take 10, 15, 8, 7. I don't really know. We'll know better in 2 or 3 months, won't we? So before I dive into it, the reason I'm here in Europe is to do on the ground like reconnaissance mission, coming here and just checking things out. I've already in the last week gone into a couple dozen, maybe 30 cathedrals, just cathedrals, not including the castles and other things I've gone into, and I've just touched the walls and the pillars and just looked up at the ceiling and getting just looking at the dimensions, everything, and spatially and how high the ceilings, and just exploring. And I am finding so many things. My knowledge has just accelerated in the last week alone. It has been from the moment we hit the European shores, it has been a gunshot sprint. Very little sleep, just going to the next thing. Trying to see as many churches, cathedrals, castles, medieval. I'm targeting medieval architecture, and there's things that I'm discovering that you can't even find online. Like the internet people don't even know to look for. So stay tuned to that. And my hope is every week I'll be giving special presentations on the things that I'm finding of the old world. So yeah, let's right here, you're looking at an article, the 1000 Years of the Phoenix. Just gave that presentation last night. Hope you guys enjoy that. Great text. And also, just as a reminder, this is on my website as well. You can go right here to the archives page. You can look up the archives itself has just a list of many of my articles. These are PDFs that you can download. Some of them it could be 20, 30 pages. They could be 12 pages. They could be 200 pages. I mean, there's just all different links on different subjects. But right here is where it's almost like a diary. And I just give you like the update. You know, I might add 2-3 pages. I might add 20, 30 pages of new content in each day. I'm going through and just going to old papers and updating them according to what I'm finding here in Europe. This right here, I want to thank everybody for your just your generosity the last month. And this was the 3rd month in the history of this being a ministry that is, you know, like a sole kind of household income ministry. We're fully 100% dependent on you for our survival. This was the 3rd month where we were able to pay Pamela Glasgow the full and desired amount of $2,500 a month that we're trying to get to her so she can survive. And for those of you who don't know, Pamela is the one that is translating the Paleo, and this is her. I mean, it's a joint project, a collaborative project, in that she's working with Rebecca as well, who we fully support. But I just thank everybody, and you can see here what our goal is to finish this month in the next couple of weeks, just so we could get, you know, people paid and so on and so forth, and keep moving this operation forward. So without further ado, this is the Paleo-Hebrew Gospel of Matthew, Bashara Matthew, as Pamela calls it. And we're hopefully going to be covering chapters 1 and 2 tonight. Just like all of Matthew, it's all weighty. So maybe I'll be able to better gauge how far we're going to go each week, whether it's 1 chapter, 2 chapters, 3 chapters. Hopefully I'm coming in clear. Hopefully you can all hear me. I'm enjoying my espresso right now. And so the way I'm doing this is, for those of you who paid attention or were following my Torah portions that I did last year, I plan to do those. I think I might do those again this September. I got such good feedback from individuals. I took a year off, at least a year off, to just do a line for line through Genesis, which kind of went into this like this abyss. It went into the abyss of Genesis chapter 1. I think it was like this like vacuum, this like, I don't know, like there was no getting out of Genesis 1 and 2. It just kept finding stuff. But the way I did the Torah portions was I would line up the Paleo, because we were going through Paleo, Genesis through Deuteronomy, with the KJV. So I'm going to do the same thing here for those of you following along online. If there is interest, I would love to put out a book that actually lines up Pamela's Paleo with the KJV line for line. For those of you who might be interested in something like that, to send it my way. Say, hey, I would love to purchase a book like that for research purposes, so that I could back it up with a source text. We'll be happy to work on something like that for you guys. All right, so you guys know that this is starting out. This is a generations. This is a begot chapter. There's a lot of names in here. I will try not to butcher them. Here we go. These are the generations of Yasha'u Ban instead of Ben, David, or Dawad, son of Abraham. Now, just so you know, that is not a typo there. I did ask Pamela about that. The Messiah's name in the Paleo would be Yeshua, just like Joshua. I mean, my name is Noel Joshua Hadley. It's the same thing without a J, pretty much. It's just Yeshua. And she says that that's what it says right there. And she just, and that's one of the things I really appreciate about Pamela's translation. One thing that we have found through this process a lot is that biblical translators, they don't know what to do with a lot of the Hebrew. Give you an example. All through the Torah, it will list names like Moses or Abraham or some of the other individuals with an L in front of it. El, that would be modern Hebrew. Paleo would be Al, Al, for Elohim. And it puts this almost like God reverence status in front of their names. And modern translators are like, well, that goes outside of our worldview. We don't really know what to do with that. So we're just going to leave it out. We're just going to leave it out of all translations, all English translations. And it's like, why? Just because you don't understand what it means doesn't mean that you should leave it out, because maybe somebody else is going to figure it out, right? And that's one of the things I appreciate about her translation, that she's just being loyal to what she sees. Look, this is how it's spelled. This is what it says. You don't have to like it. Don't have to understand it. This is just what it is. Continuing. Abraham brought forth Ath Yetshak, and Yetshak brought forth Ath Yaakub, and Yaakub brought forth Yehuda and his brothers. Yehuda brought forth Pheretz and Zarak from Thumar. Pheretz brought forth Chatzaraun. Chatzaraun brought forth Athram, and Ram brought forth Ath Amayanudab. And Amayanudab brought forth Ath Nukashaun. Hopefully you guys can read the King James right next to me. And Nukashaun brought forth Shalamaun, and Shalamaun brought forth Beuaz. That would be Boaz. Though, does it say right there booze in the KJV? I think that says booze instead of Boaz. That's kind of interesting. And Bauaz from Rechab, the fornicator. Bauaz brought forth Abed from Ruth or Rauth, and Abed brought forth Yashaya. Yashaya brought forth Ath, that would be Daud or David, and Daud brought forth Shalama, that'd be Solomon, from the covenant woman of Arayah. Shalama brought forth Rakabaam. Rakabaam brought forth Asaiah. This is quite the way to begin a Matthew study, let me tell you. I'm glad Genesis doesn't begin this way. Asa'ah brought forth Yehoshaphat, and Yehoshaphat brought forth Yaurad, and Yaurad brought forth Ahuziah. Ahuziah brought forth Hazakuah, and Hazakuah brought forth Ath Manusha, and that would be, of course, Manasseh and Hezekiah. Manusha brought forth Ath Amaun, and Amaun brought forth Ath Yaashaya. Yeshaya brought forth Yekanuah and his brothers in the exile of Babel. Yekanuah brought forth Ath Sha'alah Thu Ya'al, and then he brought forth Ath Zarubabel. Zerubbabel brought forth Ath Alayakuam, and Alayakuam brought forth Azaur, and Azaur brought forth Ath Zadauk, and Zadauk brought forth Ath Akuyam, and Akuyam brought forth Ath Alahaud, and Alahaud brought forth Eleazar, and Eleazar brought forth Ath Mathun, and Mathun brought forth Oth Yaqub, and Yaqub brought forth Oth Yosef or Yausaf. This Yausaf is the one who is the man of Miriam, mother of the one we call Mashiach, and who is called in a foreign barbarous language Christus. This is what it says in the Hebrew Gospel of Matthew. It actually literally says that that's the barbarous tongue, the language in the Greek. So that's kind of interesting. And all the generations from Abraham until Daud are 10 and 4 generations. And from Daud until the exile in Babel are 10 and 4 generations. And from the exile in Babel unto Yasha'u are 10 and 4 generations. So this isn't going to be too much of a study tonight on the numbers themselves, generations. I do want to start out that way. Since Matthew starts out his book that way, we're just going to go with the flow of Matthew. And it is interesting how we see two types of generations in the Bible. We see 14 generations versus 10 generations. So there was some sort of paradigm shift between the Old Testament, I should say in the Old Testament. I mean, like the first half we see in the timeline, we see 10 generations and 10 generations, and then something happens and it goes up to 14 generations and 14 generations and 14 generations. Wouldn't it be awesome if, I mean, it's sad when we think about this, that the generation count stopped with Mashiach. Like, we don't know after the last, 2,000 years, whatever your timeline is, just go with 2,000 years here. Like, we don't know how many generations there's been in the last 2,000 years. Has there been 14? Like, is it 10? I mean, how do we calculate this? And it's kind of sad that it seems like they really understood their generations in the books. They were recorded, they weren't lost, and they knew where they were in history. So I'm not going to be reading through Genesis here, or else we'll be here all night, but I want you to see that there were 10 generations from Adam to Noah. So we see Adam, Seth, Enos, Canaan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, and then finally Noah. And then, of course, over here, I'm not going to pronounce all, but we have the Paleo-Hebrew over here. We do have the Paleo in Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, as I mentioned. We have the Torah. Moving on over here, we have 10 more generations after that from Noah to Abraham. So we go from Shem to how do we pronounce this in the Paleo? Arapakshad. To Salah or Salak, to Eber, to Peleg, to Reu, to Serug, to Nahor, to Terah, and then to Abraham. All right, so 10, and then after that, it goes in. That's where the kind of the paradigm shift happens with Abraham, and then we go into generations of 14 according to Matthew. So what I can't tell you tonight is why it went from 10 to 14, but I do have some information on the number 10 and the number 14 itself. The number 10 is huge. Appearances of the number 10. We, of course, like I just showed you, we have 10 generations from Adam to Noah and 10 generations from Shem to Abram. The number 10 in Exodus. There is, of course, 10 plagues that Elohim, and Al or Elohim would be the paleo for God, in case you're unaware. A lot of people know now that Elohim is the modern Hebrew word for God. But in Paleo, it would say Elohim. He sent 10 plagues. So we see that the Nile rivers turned into blood. There's the plague of frogs, number 2. 3, the plague of lice, swarm of beasts, plague on the cattle, boils, great storm of hail, thunder, and lightning, locusts. Number 9 would be the darkness, the 3 days of darkness over the entire land. And then 10, the death of the firstborn of both man and beast. The final judgment. But then we have the 10 commandments. Not going to go through the 10 commandments with you guys tonight. Well, maybe I should. Let's see. What do we got? We got you shall have no other God before you, or as it says here in the Paleo, there shall not exist to you Allahayam Akarayam, secondary Allahayam to my face. You shall not fashion, working by labor, to yourselves a graven image or semblance of that which is in Shamayam above. Do not bow yourself down to them and do not serve them. Do not take the name Yahweh, your Allahaya, to emptiness, vanity, falsehood. Don't take his name in vain. Number 4, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. And it describes here for anyone who is unsure about this. People tell me all the time what Sabbath means to them. And I'm like, well, okay, that's nice that you're defining it for yourself that way. But what does the actual, like the actual commandments tell you what murder is and adultery is and covetousness, these kind of things. So what does the actual command say here? What the 4th commandment is it's actually a lot more specific than most Christians think it is or have been taught it is. And it's unfortunate that I don't think most people probably read the 10 commandments for themselves, which is not tonight's activity. I recommend you go, I guess homework assignment tomorrow, or your next Sabbath day, Saturday, unless if you're a lunar Sabbath individual, is to go and read the 10 commandments for yourself. Honor your father and mother. That's 5th. We just had National Honor Your Father, National 5th Commandment Day with Mother's Day. No murder, adultery, stealing, no lifting up the voice and lying testimony against your companion. Do not covet or desire a companion's covenant woman or his servant or his ox or his ass, or all of which belongs to your friends. Those are the 10 commandments right there. So we have 10. All right. Oh, look at this. I wrote them out all right here. That would have been a lot easier for me to go through. Oh, well. The Passover lamb was selected on day 10. We see that in the 10th day of this month, the command is to take the lamb to your into your actual house. And you should keep it until the 14th day of the same month. So the number 14 is going to tie in with 7 and 7, by the way. We're not there yet. So, of course, we know the Messiah was selected on the 10th day. Not doing a study on this. John 12:1 doesn't specifically say it was day 10 of the month. However, it's one of those things, if you kind of look at the dates all around it and how John is working this into the narrative, this is what we read. Then Yahshua, 6 days before the Passover, came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, which had been dead, whom he raised from the dead. I put that in there, but then you have to figure out like when his triumphal entry was just after that. And it was, of course, day 10. Day 10 of the 7th month is the Day of Atonement. And again, there you see the 7, which 7 and 7 is 14, right? So day 10, Day of Atonement, which is the holiest day of the year. This is the day that the blood is sprinkled on the mercy seat by the high priest, and all sin is forgiven on that day. Speaking of which, Enoch was 7 of the 10 of Adam's generation, which seems to be like a reversal of atonement right there, right? So day 10 of the 7th month, he was the 7th of the 10. And of course, again, 7 and 7 is 14. I'll be talking more about Enoch in a second. There are 10 mentioned books lost or purposely left out of canon. So 10 that can be found that are mentioned in canon. And they are the Book of the Wars of Yahuwah, the Book of Jasher, or Yasher, the Book of the Acts of Solomon. That actually sounds insanely fascinating. The Book of Nathan the Prophet, the Book of Gad the Seer, the Prophecy of Ahijah the Shiloite, the Visions of Iddo the Seer, the Book of Shemaiah the Prophet, the Book of Jehu, the son of Hanani, and the sayings of Hosea. Every single one of those sounds fascinating, do they not? With the instance of, now there's debates on the Book of the Wars of Yahuwah. I do think we have a version of the Book of Jasher. I don't know if it has been added to through the years, but I do think it is from a historically accurate or original source, if that makes any sense to you, though that is highly debated. And I have learned much in the book of Jasher. It is actually in my canon. So there's that. If you own a copy of the Sefer, it is included. And there's probably other Bible translators. They're jumping on board now and realizing like these books actually, why are we going by this 66 canon? Like why? Where's the commands? Where does it say that in the Bible that we have to listen to this Roman Church Council, right? And so they're bringing them back into the binding, and it's such exciting times to be alive. There are 7 firmaments of heaven and an additional 8, 9, and 10, making 10 total. And we get this from Ascension of Isaiah, Apocalypse of Abraham, 3rd Baruch. I've done studies on these, not doing those again tonight. And then, of course, we can look at the menorah, 7 prongs. Enoch's 10-week calendar. This is fascinating. Now, again, don't want to be a study on this tonight, but I will read this really quickly because I get asked this question all the time. So, might as well kill multiple birds with one stone, right? What a terrible saying. And after that, in the 6th week, all who live in it shall be blinded. So there's in Enoch's calendar, there's 10 weeks in the history of the world, right? We're dealing with the number 10. Keep in mind that Enoch was the 7th out of the 10th. So the 6th week is kind of interesting because it says that all who live in it shall be blinded, and the hearts of all of them shall godlessly forsake wisdom. And in it a man shall ascend, and at its close the house of dominion shall be burnt with fire, and the whole race of the chosen root shall be dispersed. Now, people will try to position Enoch's calendar in different ways. Some people will say this is referring to Elijah. I disagree. I actually think this is referring to Messiah, and that he is the one that ascends, and that the house, the Jerusalem, is burnt down. I mean, it's specifically tied in. Like Elijah does not have the same prophecies tied in with the destruction of Judah, whereas Yahshua specifically does. Like he's like, this. I'm coming to tell you, this is the generation that's going to happen. And so what's really interesting about that is that in the following week, week 7. It says there is an apostate generation that arises, and many shall be its deeds, and all its deeds shall be apostate. Now, this is the reason right here that many people try to rearrange it, I think, and make week 6 about Elijah, because they don't know how to deal with the fact that following Messiah is a week of apostasy, and that's actually referring to the explosion of Antioch, Alexandrian Christianity. And what I mean by that is that there was a takeover of the religion of lawless types, those who did not want to keep the commands. They didn't want to keep Sabbath. They didn't want to keep the dietary laws. They were throwing all this stuff out, to anyone who does read the Torah and obeys the Torah, that is complete apostasy. And there were, the Nazarene and these other groups out there looking at these Greek Christians coming in and taking over the religion, the faith, and going, this is just straight up apostasy. Well, moving forward from that, at its close, so this ties in right with my timeline. A lot of people ask, where I'm getting my timeline from with the millennial kingdom, and why I say that there was a spiritual embodiment of the kingdom in the 500s. You have an entire week between Messiah and the kickstart of the millennial kingdom, which was an age of apostasy. This is where we have Constantine, all that kind of stuff. And at the end of it, at its close, shall be elected the elect righteous of the eternal plan of righteous to receive 7-fold instruction concerning all of his creation. So we get into then it says that there's an 8th, 9th, and 10th, making up the 10, total kind of, it's rounding off history, right? So in the 8th week is really interesting because it says that of righteousness, and a sword shall be given to it, that a righteous judgment may be executed on the oppressors, and sinners shall be delivered into the hands of the righteous. This is the beginning of the millennial kingdom. This, I believe, happened in the 500s. Some of you are like, what kind of Bible study is this? I did not show up to hear this guy talking about all this other stuff. Well, we're going to get into Matthew. I guarantee you. But we're taking our time here, right? We're looking at everything bits and pieces. And at its close, they shall acquire houses through their righteousness, and a house shall be built for the great King and glory forevermore. I think that's referring to New Jerusalem. And all mankind shall look to the path of uprightness. Now, this ties in. Right now, I'm in Europe, looking at specifically targeting Gothic architecture. I'm looking at Byzantine too. I would, list that off as more Tartarian. That is after the Millennial Kingdom. But I'm still interested in. I'm interested to see how the shift and how they keep the same kind of ancient tech, but how it changes in form. And it is interesting because when you look at the early Middle Ages and the late Middle Ages, you divide up the Middle Ages by 500 and 500. So 500 to 1,000, 1,000 to 1,500. They tell us that all these cathedrals were not built until the beginning of the late Middle Ages, which if you pay attention to Enoch, it says the same thing. It says the same thing, that there's going to be, it seems like the first half of the Millennial Kingdom, we're not going to have these grand epic cathedrals. That comes in the second half. And I have found that, a lot of people get really annoyed at me that I actually keep to the general timeline put in front of us, that we are 2,000 years removed from Messiah. I have found it to be trustworthy and true. Time again, I find that it fits like a glove. Everything fits in there really well, and you can see the Orwellian, how they kind of flip everything into a negative, into darkness, but really it's light, and vice versa. All right. Then Enoch gets into the short season. So let's look into the number 14, which is where we're at in Matthew, where all of a sudden we have 14 generations. Now, the 14th day of the first month is the Passover. So again, interesting because we're leading up to our Passover lamb, right? I almost have to wonder if the cutoff was, if you select the lamb on the 10th day, Abraham was the last of the 10 and he was selected, and from him became a people. Maybe that's it. I just thought of that just now while I'm live. Maybe that's it. Let me know your thoughts. I already read this, Exodus 12:3. So you see that in the 10th day and the 14th day. Cain and Abel on the 14th day of Nisan. That's the day that he killed his brother on Passover. Amazingly. It says this right here in the Aramaic Targum. This would be Genesis 4. It says, and it was at the end of days on the 14th of Nisan that Cain brought of the produce of the earth the seed of cotton or line and oblation of first things before Yahweh, and Havel brought of the first things of the flock. You guys know the story. He wasn't too happy, killed his brother. It's the basic story of of course, the Day of Atonement is when we get the Yahweh goat and the Zazel goat, but it's the basic story of the Zazel goat trying to kill the Yahweh goat. Of course, which is what happens, right? Zazel goats sent out in the wilderness. The Yah goat is killed for our sins. On the night of day 14 of the first month of Nisan, apparently Elohim made two covenant promises to Abraham. Now, I was seeing the rabbinical when I was putting together the study. You schedule so much time to do it in your life. And I was getting this from the rabbinical community. I'm like, well, this is really interesting. I was trying to find their sources on it. As you can see, I dropped the ball on that there. So I don't have any sources for you on that there. There are 14 books in the Apocrypha. And now there's many more extra biblical books than this. But if, you look at your, even the original KJV, when it was released in the Protestant Reformation, they had the Apocrypha in there. These are the books. First Esdras, Second Esdras, Ecclesiasticus, Bel and the Dragon, Tobit, Baruch, Epistle of Jeremiah, Prayer of Manasseh, Judith, Song of the Three Children, First and Second Maccabees, Additions to Esther, Susanna, and Sirach. So there's your 14 right there. And of course, 7 represents completion. That thus 7 plus 7 equals 14, which indicates a double completion. All right, so let's continue reading through, and this is where we're going to really dig into the good stuff tonight, guys. I hope you guys are enjoying this. Thanks for being here. I agree, Jenna. I'm going to post your comment here. Wait, if I can't scroll over. Wait, I can't get to your comment right there. She says, I love when that happens. No, I think she's referring to when I had that like that discovery while I was live. I put that together. It's amazing how that happens because, I'll read through this and I'll read through this and I'll study. Spend hours putting these documents together for you guys. And even coming up to showtime tonight, I was still like, I was eating dinner and like things were popping in my head. I'm like, I got to put this in. And so I'm like racing to like change my document and stuff. And I thought I had it all together. And then things are coming to me while I'm live. But let's continue reading through we're again reading Matthew chapter 1-2, the conception of Yeshua, and the coming forth of, and there again, it says, even though she puts in the title there, Yeshua, it says right there in the text, Yeshua. And the coming forth of Yeshua existed in this way. And it occurred that when his mother was betrothed to Yosef, before he knew her, she was discovered to be pregnant from the Ruach or the Ra'uk Hakudash. That would be the Holy Spirit. And Yosef existed as a righteous man, and he did not intend to settle down to dwell with her. Isn't that interesting there? That just, throw this out there because I didn't come with commentary on this tonight. It says Joseph was a righteous man, guys. He was a righteous man. And I have all these people coming to me on the internet, saying you cannot be righteous. It is impossible to be righteous. And they've heard this so much from the pulpit. They've heard this propaganda, just like they put a funnel into their mouth and just poured gallons of this crap into their mouth, telling them that they are just a pile of crap and that they are filthy rags and they could never do good no matter how. And if you try to do good, you are now workspace, and that's evil to want to do good. To want to do good is evil now. And I get this all the time from very confused individuals. And I have been in churches where the pastors will actually say stuff like this. And then they will, of course, reprimand you if you sin, whatever like Baptist sinning is. It's different rules. But no, he was a righteous man. All right. That needs to be said. What does that mean to be righteous? Right. Yeshua was righteous, but you can choose. Everyone out there, I just want you to know, you can choose not to transgress the Torah. Right? You could read the Torah and go, okay, I see what it's saying, and I'm going to choose not to do this, which is what he chose not to do. He was a righteous man, and he did not intend to settle down to dwell with her. Right? So it's giving you like because he's righteous, he's like, he actually has a circumcised heart here. Like he had every right to put the jealousy test in front of her. And actually, man, maybe I should have quoted from an extra biblical book where that does happen, where he is drugged in front of the priest in the temple, and they're given the jealousy test and they pass it. But he did not wish to banish her, to bring her to shame, and not to bind her over to death. However, it existed that grieving, he wanted to make a covering over her. Isn't that special? Joseph's in this position where I do believe he was a much older man. And I know modern evangelical society says otherwise. I've read enough that I'm of the opinion he was a much older man, and he really did want to just take care of her. And he sees this young little girl, probably scared or whatever. And yeah. And as he meditated in his heart on this matter, that behold, Malak of Yahweh, that would be a messenger, but we know this isn't an angel, appeared toward him in a dream and declared, Yosef ban Daud, you will not fear to take her as your covenant woman. Do you guys think that Joseph went around being called son of David? Like, was that a title that he actually had day by day? I mean, I'm asking because like, maybe he was just like, people are like, hey, son of David. Like they knew this guy was in line to be king, right? Like if they were to reinsert the throne in Judah, that Joseph would be like, he'd be up there. Like that could be the case. It could be the case. But I'm thinking this is really special that this angel came and he's like, son of David. And you're like, what? That's crazy. You will not fear to take her as your covenant woman. She is pregnant from the Ra'uk or Ruach HaKodesh, and she will bear a son, and she will call out his name, Yasha'ua, for he will deliver my people from their guilt contracted by sinning. Now, I want you to pay attention to this right here because I'm going to be going over the virgin prophecy tonight and the controversy, and this is a big point of contention. And people will point out that that Matthew writing this, he had some bad theology, and that the entire faith was built upon this shaky, bad theology. I'm going to be covering this and showing why I don't believe that's true. But I want to point out here that it's actually not Matthew who is uh, m- strictly misrepresenting Isaiah's prophecy. It's actually the angel here who is coming and saying that this woman who you are with, that this child is not from any man. All right. So it's the angel saying this, not Matthew. I've heard people misrepresenting this and saying that Matthew got it wrong. But he's actually quoting from the angel here. Just good to point out. And all this completed what was written from off the prophet upon the mouth of Yahweh. And see, now this is Matthew talking here, right? This is no longer the angel talking. He's now quoting from Isaiah. And this is where people try to get him at bad theology. Behold, the damsel. Notice that Pamela didn't put virgin in here. She put the damsel, which is it's the word Alma instead of Betula, and we'll go through that. The damsel, she will conceive and she will bear a son, and you will call out his name Emmanuel, which is Alakuyam with us. And Yahusaph rose from his slumber, and he fashioned like all which the Malak of Yahweh had commanded, Athem. And he took her as his covenant woman, but he knew her not until she had brought forth her son, the firstborn, and he called out his name Yeshua. Break 3, the birth of Yeshua. And it existed like this. Yeshua or Yeshua was born in Beath Lakam, that would be Bethlehem, in Yehuda or Yahuda, in the days of Herodes the king. And behold, seers in the stars came from the rising of the sun unto Jerusalem to declare, where is he, the one to be born, the Malak of the Yahudim? We have observed his circuit in the rising of the sun and have come near with important gifts to bow down, giving homage unto him. Probably not the best idea to go up to the imposter king that was put in place by the Caesars and to declare this. It's almost like ironic that they call him wise men, right? Because it doesn't seem very wise to me, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe they were trying to stir up some unrest. Who really knows? And Herodes the king heard and responded, and he was startled, and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem with him. And he gathered together all the great ones, and he demanded from them if they knew in what standing place that the Mashiach would be born. And they responded toward him in Beath Lakam, or Bethlehem of Yehuda, as was written upon the mouth of the prophet. In you, Beath Lakam of Yehuda, place of Epirath, in the land of Yehuda. You who are little in Yehuda, from you shall come forth to me the one who shall exist to me, a ruler in Yasharel. Now, the thing that just blows my mind in this is that the entire first century is a narrative of one which they were anticipating the coming of the Messiah. They knew what hour they were living in. They knew this was it. He was anticipated to come. You've got these guys from maybe well, let me just say this. What blows my mind is the fact that they were right down the road from Bethlehem. All these guys, these priests and these people that King Herod brought in, Bethlehem would have been a day's commute. Today, it's about 5, maybe 10 miles. I mean, I've made the journey many times. It's Today it's just a hop and a skip on the freeway. You're there in 20 minutes from Bethlehem to Jerusalem. It's really fast. Back then it might have taken 4 or 5 hours by horse to get there. But it was a day's journey. And if I were one of the top, like, if I had risen through the ranks and I'm one of the top, like, religious leaders of the land, never mind that. I'm the guy in the back of the bus. I'm just the guy who's passionate about Yahuwah. You would think that I would want to go there and investigate this and go like, yeah, I'm going to just dedicate a day of my life to go over there and see if I could find this Messiah that was born, because that would be awesome. Because we're waiting for him, right? Nobody did it. Maybe it was despite these wise men. Maybe they were so proud that they themselves didn't see the sign in the stars, but these wise men did. These magi from the east, these students of Nimrod or whoever they were. And maybe that was it. Maybe pride got in the way, but nobody went. And never mind the fact that we all know what happened, right? With Herod killing all the babies. Where was like, we know that there was an outcry, but not in the right reasons. Nobody was going like, okay, Herod is killing all the babies because there is a king that was born that is going to usurp the Roman Empire and Herod. Like, why could nobody get behind that? That seems like that would be reason to be like, yeah, let's crown this baby right now and get this kingdom going. Then Herod, or Herodes, the king, called out to the soothsayers in secret to ask at what time they had observed the star. And he sent them forth into Beth-Lechem, and he declared to them, walk and investigate well, treading about, seeking the boy. And upon your discovery of him, bring him forth to me, and I also will come toward him to bow down, doing homage. And you guys all know where this story is going. And they heard and responded toward the king, and they walked, and behold, the star which they had observed in the rising sun walked before their faces until they had come unto the standing place. If there's time tonight, I want to get to the star and talk about this. I do not believe that this is a conjunction of planets. We had the Bethlehem, what they said was the star of Bethlehem. I remember back in like 2014, 2015, I remember going and observing it. And it doesn't really matter whether it sat right with me or not. I mean, the truth is the truth, no matter how I feel about it. But based on all that I've read in the past, I actually believe this was not a conjunction of planets, that this was an actual original unique star that appeared in the sky. It was, it would be more important would be what constellation it appeared in. And did it appear in Virgo is what I want to know. And just as they came into Beth-Lechem, it stood over against the standing place there where the boy was. And it existed just as they observed the star. They rejoiced with exceedingly great joy. And they came toward the house, and they found him and Miriam, his mother. And they knelt before his face, and bowing down did homage to him. Then they opened to him their pouches, and they brought toward him gold and white frankincense and myrrh, which in a foreign barbarous tongue is myrrh. You're going to find this throughout Matthew, where Matthew is writing in Hebrew. And of course, Pamela is convinced that he wrote in Paleo. And we do know that people were still writing in Paleo in the first century, by the way. So this is something that they don't emphasize in the Greek text that we read, that we are reading from the barbarous tongue. Of course, just to be fair, English would also be a barbarous tongue, just so we're all understood. We are reading from a Targum of the Paleo. But being commanded in a dream from the Malach not to turn back towards Herodes, they returned to their land in another pathway. Break 4. Yeshua's sojourn in Mitzrayim. It was while they were walking, to behold, the Malach of Yahuwah appeared toward Yosef. And he said, rise up, take off the boy and off his mother, and run away into Mitzrayim, and stay there until I declare toward you. For Herodes will seek the boy to murder him. And he took the boy and his mother and existed there until the death of Herodes, to complete what was said upon the mouth of the prophet. And from Mitzrayim I have called out to my son. Break 5, the revenge of Herodes. I should have put more focus on that as well. On the big controversy of these different prophecies, because people will point out, well, this could be referring to Moses right here, things like that. And because when I talk about the virgin prophecy in Isaiah, um, and I could see what the opposing side of the argument is saying, and I think it's important I found it's important to look at all the different sides of the arguments, because if you just keep to one side of the argument, you might be missing truths that the other side has, even though the other side might be blinded to things that you have. And I'm of the opinion that within Scripture, you can get multiple things out of one prophecy. To help you understand what's happening here, you need to look no further than the Dead Sea Scrolls. And the Dead Sea Scrolls, they were proficient in that, where they would almost to the point that they're mocked by a lot of people today, because they would write these texts in which they were taking passages of Scripture which were clearly written towards another purpose, and they were kind of directing it towards their day. And it seems like, my understanding of this, it seems like this is what Matthew is doing as well. And I'm totally okay with that. When Herodes realized that the soothsayers had dealt unkindly toward him, and being very much grieved in his heart, then he commanded, and he sent forth word to all his noble princes to kill all the young boys which were in Baath-lechem and her borders, the ones born from the time which the soothsayers had declared to him the boy was born. So was made complete the words which were spoken by the prophet Jeremiah, or Jeremiah. We have heard a voice in Ramah, wailing, bitter crying, Rachel mourning over her sons, and so on. And it existed that just as Herodes the king died, that Malach of Yahuwah, this is an angel appearing again, appeared towards Yahusaph in a dream in Mitzrayim to declare, rise up, take the boy and his mother, and walk toward the inhabited lands, for he is dead, the ones who trampled about seeking the boy for his death. And he, Yahusaph, rose up, and he took the boy and his mother, and he turned back toward the inhabited lands. But when he heard the what is this word here? That is a big word, Pamela. When he heard the ha'uraku nu'us, his name is Aragiah, was Malach for the people in Yehuda in his father Herodes' stead. He, Yahusaph, feared to walk there. So he, being urged by the Malach in a dream, he turned his face toward the land of Galigal, that would be Galilee. And he came and he settled down to dwell in a city called Nazareth, in order to confirm that he was declared of the prophet, he shall be called Nazareth. Matthew 1-2 thus concludes our reading of Paleo-Matthew. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Good night, everybody. Just kidding. We have a lot more to talk about. But that's the reading for tonight. And as you can see there, I think, if I'm counting this correctly, Matthew has thrown in 3 prophecies, Old Testament prophecies already. So let's start talking about the virgin prophecy. The virgin prophecy. So the word that is used here is not Betula and is not virgin. It is Alma or Almaha. And this is a point of great controversy as to the meaning of this. Now, as I've already shown you, just so we're clear, the context of Matthew chapter 1, Matthew is writing this from the perspective that she was a virgin, that she had, well, actually, I guess you could argue whether she was or wasn't. He was writing from the position that this child was clearly conceived from the Ruach HaKodesh, through the Holy Spirit, through the Father and through the Holy Spirit. So that no man conceived her. All right. But damsel, Almaha, is a young woman of marriageable age, or a young woman newly married. So to give you an example of this, Miriam, in the other Mary in the Bible, this would have been Moses's sister. When she was watching over Mashaha, or Moses, in the basket, she was identified as an Almaha. Now, it doesn't say she's a Betula, but it is assumed that his sister Miriam, who was still living at home, she was a marrying age, but she would have been a virgin. I mean, there's no reason to think she wasn't. She was just an Almaha. It was just a way to stress It wasn't calling her, I mean, excuse my French, it wasn't calling her a whore or anything like that. That's what people try to make. As soon as people find out that Mary is not identified as a Petula, they go into this gutter state, and they start, making up all this stuff, which is clearly not in the context of the book. Now, this is the big piece of evidence right here. In the Greek LXX, that's the Septuagint. This is the most probably, I think correct me if I'm wrong, Pamela, probably the most commonly read Bible of the first century, the Greek LXX. Isaiah 7:14 says this: "Therefore the Lord, or Yahweh himself, shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin," and the Greek word that is used there is parthenos, "shall conceive in the womb and shall bring forth a son, and thou shalt call his name Emmanuel." And this was done by the Jewish council when they came up with this. This was the standard understanding of the first century, that this prophecy was referring to a virgin. So the Septuagint version of Isaiah and the Gospel of Matthew, we're talking about the Greek Gospel of Matthew, not the Hebrew now. The Greek Gospel of Matthew both use the word parthenos, which undoubtedly, unambiguously translates as virgin. The Aramaic Targum, however, takes a different route. They say, "Therefore, Yahweh himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a young woman." So they go more of the Almaha route. A young woman shall conceive and bear a son, and she shall call his name Emmanuel. Now, here's some of the controversy that comes up. And I think that, excuse me, I have like a little bit of a cold here tonight. I don't know where it's coming from. It only started when I went live, interestingly enough. I think the cure, I think I have a fever, and I think the only prescription is more cappuccino. So when you're reading through Isaiah, and I've never done an actual study on this prophecy in Isaiah, and I almost want to. Isaiah is the larger context here is that Isaiah is advising King Ahaz of Yehuda during a time of total political turmoil, in which his entire kingdom can be overturned. And Isaiah offers a sign to reassure Ahaz that Allah will deliver Jerusalem from the threat of the kings of Israel and Syria. So some interpretations suggest that the prophecy in Isaiah 7 could refer to Isaiah's own wife, to the missus, to the prophetess, as Isaiah calls her, who would bear a child named Emmanuel. So the context is like, so according to this, Isaiah would not be making a prophecy for, about 700 years in the future, or whenever it was. I'd have to look at the timetable. Hundreds of years in the future. He's like, okay, no. You, King Ahaz, will receive a sign, and the Mrs. Isaiah, she will bear a child, and his name will be Emmanuel. This is the sign that he is sending us to say, God with us. All right. So this is a position that many scholars will take. Many people, when they kind of starting to go more to the agnostic route after being religious, this is a huge point of contention for them that they will declare. Now, from where I'm at, because I've looked at this now for the last several years, and I've dug into this, and it got to the point where it almost became silly to me. I don't even know how to describe that. It's like, I kind of think that maybe the prophecy was for King Ahaz, and maybe Isaiah did have a child named Emmanuel. By the way, this is just going by Isaiah, not like the Ascension of Isaiah and some of those other books, which are undoubtedly messianic in tone. Though you do see that. You see that in Isaiah, where he talks about the millennial kingdom, the lion with the lamb, all that kind of stuff, or the wolf with the lamb. Now, but I do think that there's a double prophecy happening here. And the reason I could say that is I want to take you back into the stars. And so I just read through with my group Witness of the Stars. It was like a 4 or 5 weeks study. If you want to watch those videos, I go through line through Bollinger's Witness of the Stars. Incredible book. written in the 1800s. So much knowledge in there. It is, you can access it through Patreon for all the Patreon subscribers out there. And what Bollinger does brilliantly is he shows that all the ancient religions, the pagan religions, they all come from one source. They came off the ark, and coming off the ark, they came from the Sethite religion. And so this is why we see, one of the reasons we see of many, and I go into this a lot, the commonality of all the different religions all over the world. And one of the commonalities, so that what they would be is corruptions of the Melchizedek religion. So we have this idea that Shem was a Melchizedek, or the Shem came down and he taught Abraham, and then Abraham taught the Hebrews, and it goes to Moses, and so on and so forth. And we get the Bible. But within all these pagan religions, we have this prophecy of the Immaculate Conception, or the Virgin who gives birth to the child. This is where we get the Madonna from. And again, people see this, they realize that the Madonna and child go back to Babylon, they go back to Egypt, and they're like, oh my God, I've been lied to about everything. My whole faith is destroyed. I blame this on pastors. I blame this on bad teaching techniques. And I guess maybe here is at Tuck, one of the things I've always wanted to do is just kind of, strengthen, whip you guys into tip-top shape. I remember my first day in high school. I quickly realized that I didn't want to be bullied, obviously. And I was trying to strategize this, like how do you not get bullied in high school? And I wasn't an athlete at all. I'm like, okay, that's off the table. I'm not interested in sports. But what I was interested in is weight training. And lo and behold, the entire wrestling team, of course, the entire football team too, but specifically the wrestling team, all took weight training. I took 2 years of weight training. And so because I was in the same room with like all the wrestling team and everything, and I'm spotting them and everything, I gained a lot of respect from them, and I had their back. It was really awesome. Wherever, like if I needed anything, I had the wrestling team at my disposal. And so I was never messed with. But I remember the first day going into weight training class, I'm sitting there, the coach comes in, he's like this strict, rich German accent, and he looks around with disgust at all of us, and he's like, a lot of you, showed up to class still wearing your baby fat, and I'll never forget that. And I can't do it because I can't speak in a German accent. But that's what we need to lose, right? We need to lose our baby fat that we grew up in the church, so maybe tonight somebody out there is going to lose a little bit of that baby fat. So let's go back and start talking. This is going to seem like I'm kind of jumping around, but there's all a point to this. So we're going to bring this into the virgin prophecy. And I want to look at the Great Pyramids of Egypt. This has been a big talking point in the last couple months. This is what we read in the writings of Abraham. The context, of course, is Abraham. He's sojourning in Egypt. And the king clothed me. This would be the Pharaoh of Egypt. You could say Pharaoh here. Pharaoh clothed me in his own robes and seated me upon his throne, placing his own crown upon my head and his scepter in my hand. And I did teach him and his people in the mysteries of righteousness from first to last. That might surprise some of you, but I do believe some of the early pharaohs were righteous. And in fact, I believe that Isis and Osiris were originally righteous. I'll get to that in just a moment. And then this is what Pharaoh, so Pharaoh did introduce me into the temple, which had been built by the fathers, commenced by father Shath, that'd be Seth, and completed by father Sham, that'd be Shem, after the great flood. And therein I did officiate in the rites and ordinances of the house of Yahweh. So what are these temples that he introduced him to? I think this is a clear reference to the Great Pyramids. The Great Pyramids were started before the flood by Seth. They were finished by Shem afterwards, all from the Melchizedek religion. And I've done studies on this before, not go into it all again tonight, on how amazing the Great Pyramids truly are biblically. And looking into the travels of Noah into Europe here, we see this regarding Osiris and Isis. It says that Osiris, let's see here, and Isis, his sister, the fairest and best accomplished damsel in the world, whom afterward he took to wife and married, with whom he had also the kingdom and principality of Egypt. These two now newly espoused, he being of 80 years of age and she about 50, so she's actually older than him, which is interesting, began to apply themselves to the study of nature of herbs, to the finding out of planting, tilling, and sowing of corn, which afterwards they instructed their people in, and showed the use to their neighbors dwelling in Palestine or Palestina, of which ruled king and governor Shem, surnamed Melchizedek, who was the first that ever offered bread and wine unto Allah. From thence Osiris passed into Egypt, and there also very painfully showed them the manner of tilling and agriculture. And you see here in texts like this where originally Osiris and Isis were in league with Melchizedek. They were I don't know if they were righteous, but they were on the side of righteousness. Let's put it that way. Maybe that's a better way to phrase it. And it wasn't until after Osiris was murdered by his brother Set that it was all hijacked in Egypt. In fact, I would say Egyptian culture as a whole was hijacked. Clearly, if Shem is the one that actually finished the pyramids, and now he's working with Osiris and Isis, you see what I'm saying? And the thing is with the pyramids is that they lost the technology over time. And so you can look at the later pyramids. So you get the Khufu pyramid, beautiful, and then they get smaller and smaller and smaller till they become these dung heaps. I mean, just these pile up of mud. They look like sand castles, like elaborate sand castles out there. And they lost the technology. They didn't know how to build this. So this speaks of a pre-Diluvian time, and it is really interesting. It goes against like evolutionary theory, right? It should be that you start with the Hawara pyramid over here, and go to the Medum pyramid and the Bet pyramid, and then move all the way up to the Khafre and the Khufu at the end, right? As the crowning achievement of society was quite the opposite. But then, the talking point in the last couple months is that we have these, I'm not introducing this to anyone, I don't think, unless you watch this 20 years from now. These 8 pillars, I think there were 8, these massive pillars that were detected underneath using radar under the pyramid. Now, immediately there was an outcry from the Archaeological Society saying this is a hoax and that they don't recognize this. I don't know what's going on. Maybe they're going to let this sit for 10 years and then disprove it, kind of like that face on Mars or some of the other stuff that comes out. I don't really know, because if this is true, this is radically changing everything we know about the ancient world, especially for those of us that are in the mud fossil, mud flood, Tartaria realm of research. We're like, yeah, we kind of already knew about this kind of stuff. This is a cool find, but this just further emphasizes the point of how grand the Great Pyramid truly was, and that they're actually building these structures before the flood. Excuse me. Malpractice. Now, when we get into kind of historical revisionism research, Tartarian, whatever, Egypt is a big target for claiming that it was all invented. I mean, I actually have a book on my disposal, written recently from an individual who goes through and says that all of Egypt was invented in the last 200 years. It didn't exist. It's all made up. Maybe the real Egypt exists somewhere else, like the Grand Canyon or something like that. But they invented the whole thing. No doubt that there was a lot of corruption going on out there, moving around of mummies, things like that. Just like with fossils and other things like that. There was a lot of money to be made, particularly when the British Empire was there, the Germans were there. There was a lot of competition from different empires trying to get things into their museums, looting, all sorts of things happening. What in the world happened in Egypt? We get to this point where in the 1800s, it is buried in the sand, completely buried. And it's like, how in the world do you have these magnificent structures that are completely like, just, they have to get out the shovels to discover this all over again? How do we get to that point of malpractice from one of the greatest empires in the history of the world? I think this is it right here, Zechariah 14. I think that this really ties into millennial kingdom research. And I'll quickly say that I almost want to write a paper on this, on the Great Pyramids, and I'm kind of, honestly, I don't care if this makes me uncool. I'm kind of over the whole thing that Napoleon built the pyramids. Like, I've seen like the postcards and stuff like that. Um, I personally think this right here is just blowing that conspiracy away, and it's showing like, no, these were actually, if this is true with the pillars, this is true and amazing antiquitech, pre-Diluvian, that was put there specifically as a monument from Yah himself. And this is what we read in Zechariah 14. Then everyone who survives of all the nations, this is after when the millennial kingdom begins, that have come up against Jerusalem shall go up year after year to worship the King, Yahuwah of hosts, and to keep the feast of booths. This is Sukkot. This is a requirement, a command, post-cross, post-resurrection. The Torah abides. This is where, people get into dispensationalism. Like, well, yeah, it'll be reinstituted again, but we don't have to do it now, and then you get a lot of preterists who they see the problem with this when they say the millennial kingdom is a metaphor for an elongated time. And so a lot of them will go, well, no, actually the millennial kingdom ended by 70 AD. It was just whatever, by 70 AD, it was over, all of it. The Torah does not abide. I even shiver saying that, because that's the complete opposite of the truth. The Torah does abide. Let's keep reading. And if any of the families there do not go up to Jerusalem, the context is to keep Sukkot, to worship the King, Yahuwah of hosts, there will be no rain on them. And if the family of Egypt, notice that the only country that it targets here in Zechariah 14, it doesn't target Babylon, it doesn't target France or Russia or North or South America or Japan or Hawaii. It says Egypt does not go up and present themselves, and on them there shall be no rain. There shall be the plague with which Yahuwah afflicts the nations that do not go up to keep the feast of booths. This shall be the punishment to Egypt. So it says there, like, this will happen. Like I'm telling you right now, this applies to all the countries of the world: China, Tartaria, whatever, India, the kingdom of I don't know, Armenia, whatever. This applies to all countries, but Egypt will not do this. And the punishment to all the nations that do not go up to keep the Feast of Booths will be a plague, no rain, so on and so forth. I think we are seeing that fulfillment in Zechariah 14, specifically on Egypt. Now, why am I talking about the pyramids and the Sphinx, and how does this tie into the virgin prophecy I'm about to tell you right now? According to Bollinger in his book Witness of the Stars, this was mind-bending for me to read this, is that so signs Leo and Virgo, he's showing you here a drawing. This is actually a picture of it here. I couldn't locate the exact point he's talking about, but he said that the ceiling of the portico, the temple of Esna in Egypt, showing the Sphinx between uniting the beginning and end of the Zodiac. So right there, what they're telling you what the Sphinx is that the Sphinx this was built by Seth and Shem, and that this is telling you how to read the prophecies in the stars. All the Bible prophecies, when the prophets are like writing these, I do believe that they were being spoken to by the Ruach HaKodesh, just so there's no confusion. But they're looking up at the stars. Like you could look in Revelation, you could look in Daniel. They're describing this stuff, and guys, it's in the Zodiac. It's right up there. And so they're telling you, okay, this is how you read the Zodiac. You begin with Leo, the lion, which of course reminds us of, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. You begin with Virgo and you end with Leo the lion. So this is what he actually says in his book. As I have said, the popular beginning today is with Aries the ram, but comparing this revelation with that which was afterwards written in the volume of the book, Virgo is the only point where we can intelligently begin, and Leo is the only point where we can logically conclude. So think of it like this. So Genesis chapter 3 prophecy begins with the virgin, okay, with Virgo, and it ends at the end of Revelation with Judah, or I say the Lion of Judah, that death is actually under his paw. Like he conquers death. It's over, right? And so what we're going to see is that all of the world religions, all over the world, Virgo is the same. This was like one of the mind-bending things, that they all understood that this constellation was speaking of the virgin with her child. So when they're all showing the lady, like showing Madonna with her child, guys, yeah, oh, it's, everything is pagan, right? Just sing the song, it's all pagan. But they're looking up at the constellations that Yah put there to tell his story. All right. So they're actually, even though it's a little corrupted, they're actually telling his story, which came to fruition with Mashiach. It's not the other way around, where the early Christians were just, ripping off the mysteries of Isis, or, the Babylonian mysteries with, Semiramis and Tammuz and all that kind of stuff. They're actually, this is why Yahweh says in the Torah, he's like, look, you need to stop worshiping the other gods, stop paying them homage, all this stuff. I'm going to instruct you. I'm going to lead you, just get out of that mess. Is not this what is spoken of as the unknown and insoluble mystery, the riddle, the Sphinx? The word Sphinx is from, you can see that word there, to bind closely together. It was therefore designed to show where the two ends of the zodiac were to be joined together, and where the great circle of the heavens begins and ends. The Sphinx is a figure with the head of a woman and the body of a lion. Now, that might be debated. That was his conclusion, and I think he brings up a titillating point. I'm looking at the time, and I'm realizing that we're not going to get to the wise men tonight. So this is a good test to see like how much I can cover in 1 week. I might have to pick up next week talking about the wise men before going into Matthew chapter 3. We'll make it a 2-week affair for the birth of Mashiach. Joseph's dream and the Zodiac. I'm going to cover this really quickly because I think this is important to understanding the stars above. And it says, then he dreamed another dream and related to his brothers and said, I have dreamed another dream where the sun and the moon and the 11 stars came and did homage to me. So this, of course, is, he would be one of the constellations, right? We know he got a double portion with Ephraim and Manasseh, but his 11 brothers, they're all bowing down. The sun and the moon are bowing down. So we know that the sun is the father, the moon is the mother. They have 12 children in the zodiac. Then we see Ezekiel 37 says this. Why do I need to read that? I don't need to read that. I don't know why I put that in there. I came up with this study like 2 months ago. So sometimes I'm like, the Noel from 2 months ago doesn't make any sense to me. So hopefully the Noel from today makes sense to you. Now this is one of Bullinger's drawings here, where he takes the camp in the wilderness, and he shows that right there in the middle, you see Levi. They're the ones in the middle of the camp. They're guarding the tabernacle, right? And then he puts all the tribes around them. Now this is the maybe the cognitive dissonance. And I don't blame Bullinger, because, in his day, the scholarly work, he didn't have to, it's very impressive, but he didn't have to work with what we have to work with today. But you notice he draws it in a square. So Bullinger is dealing with, he was a flat earthist. He believed there was a solid circular dome over us. So he should have drawn in a circle, but he's drawing in a square. So it kind of loses a little bit of its flair here. I can tell you right now that I have not yet figured out why he put it in the order that he put it in. Nevertheless, what I mean by that is he puts the constellations in an order, why he assigns the tribes that he does. So you can see right here on the top, he put Judah as the lion, as Leo the lion. I get that. We all get that. I'm not sure why he put Zebulon as Virgo to the right. Okay. And then he put Simon there as Pisces, Reuben as Aquarius, Gad as Aries, Ephraim and Manasseh the bull as Taurus the bull, Benjamin as Gemini, Asher, I'm reading this like sideways here, Asher as Sagittarius, Dan as Scorpio, Naphtali as Capricorn, and Issachar as Cancer. Not sure why he did all that. And then he puts Levi as Libra. If you guys have any insight on that, please don't hold back. I've also seen other, this one is kind of popular, designs where they depict, this doesn't make sense to me. I get what they're doing. They put it in a cross. They say that the Israel camped in the wilderness. They were positioned kind of almost like military positions in the form of a cross. I can buy this because the Tav, the cross, is another ancient symbol. It goes back to Babylon. Goes back to Tammuz. It goes back to Egypt as well. And then, of course, with theirs, they would put a circle on top of it. And again, the everything is pagan people will say that, like, my Messiah did not die on a cross because that's pagan. Wait, don't look at it. Don't look at it because it's pagan. Oh, how dare they kill him on, a pagan symbol. It's like, okay, no. Okay, first of all, this goes back to the Sethite religions. All right, that I am convinced that the Tav, this X marks the spot, the cross, the T, whatever you want to call it, it's pre-diluvian. It goes back to the Sethite religion. And we could even do a study in showing, like, in Genesis chapter, I think it's Genesis chapter 4, in the days of, was it Jared, when idolatry started to abound. And it's actually in the Aramaic Targum, where it states that they started making idols at this time of the word of Yahweh. And I believe that this is Yahshua himself, that they were making idols of him. And I actually have compared this with what the Catholic Church does by putting him on a cross, which is to crucify him in the present. I think is straight up evil. And makes me want to just I would not take part in any kind of mass where they're, he's presently dying for them, being tortured at that moment. I'd just run out with my screaming with my, hands like flailing above me if I ever saw that happening. But anyways, all that to say, I do think this is an ancient symbol. I just don't think this is how they were camped in the wilderness. Here's another one here. We don't need to go through each one of these, but you can see here they do this because they show that the tabernacle is rectangular. And we have shown on this channel through the research of Andy Hoy, I brought him on 2 or 3 times at this point, and shown that actually the Bible never states that the tabernacle is rectangular. It actually makes way, way, way more sense that it was circular. And when you could see that it was a big dome, a big yurt tent in the wilderness, and they were camped around a circle, all of a sudden, all these other elements of history start to make a lot of sense. Right here is a medieval map that I show a lot. You see Yahshua throwing up his street creds, his Age of Pisces gang sign there, surrounded by 2 cherub. This is, of course, noting the Ark of the Covenant, that, he's on the mercy seat, surrounded by the 2 angels. We see the earth as a circle. The medievalists were really big on the earth being a circle. And they were more concerned with land division and where people went than making it precise maps like you see in the 1500s going forward, and when they started trying to figure out how to map out the world. But if you pay attention here, you see the 12 different gates of New Jerusalem going around, and this is the Zodiac. And so I actually think I see New Jerusalem as 2 things. I see it as a brick and mortar city, but I also see it as the whole earth itself, that we are the bricks, the living stones of New Jerusalem, and that the 12 gates could be the Zodiac, which makes you wonder that, like, if you want to know, like, how, since we know that we're grafted into Israel through Ephraim, through, Joseph's son, Ephraim and Manasseh, how do you, like, I ask this question a lot, like, to Christians. When you go to New Jerusalem, what gate are you going to go into? Because they're like, I'm not Israel, I'm a Gentile. And I tell them, well, there is no Gentile gate. There's no Gentile entrance whatsoever. And they're like, huh? And I'm like, read it for yourself. There are 12 gates, and they're named after the different tribes. So which tribe are you going to enter? And by default, I would say always go to Ephraim, and there's going to be some centurion like guard there, some badass angel. And he'd be like, oh, no. You go over to Simeon, you go over to Asher, you go over to Issachar. I'd be like, sweet, right? But I've often wondered if we're actually assigned our tribe according to when we're born in the Zodiac. I know that gets into pre-existence, all different stuff like that, but something to consider. So here's the the model put forward by Andy Hoy. Now, I get asked all the time, why don't you show this more often? Well, Andy Hoy only has a couple illustrations at my disposal, where you have artwork of a lot of different kinds, but this is his idea of the model, a big circular tent. And then you get this right here in Jerusalem, the Lord's temple in Jerusalem, known as the Dome of the Rock. Now, the thing about this that is interesting is that there is no other Islamic building in the world that matches this. This is a unique thing. It was not originally Islamic. I know I'm going against the history books when I say that, but I am fully convinced that this started out as a non-Islamic site that was then taken over by them. In fact, the Knights Templar specifically referred to this as the Lord's Temple. They did not refer to this as the Dome of the Rock or anything else. We see this right here in 1175 by Guillaume de Tyre, and he says that since he's speaking of the Knights Templar, he says since they had no church nor any fixed abode, the king gave them for a time a dwelling place in the south wing of the palace. So the palace would have been I'm trying to figure out, it doesn't matter which direction from this picture. But they had the king's palace was there, the stables. But they were given the Lord's temple, Yahweh's temple. This was it right there. And so all throughout their the Templars were always referring to this as Yahweh's or Solomon's temple. It went on their logos and everything. Things that make you go, huh? But this could be, I mean, you see the firmament up here, right? The big dome and everything. This could be a close representation of what the Solomon's original temple might have looked like, or the wilderness temple. And I'm also not convinced that Solomon built a rectangular temple. I'm not completely convinced of that yet. So once again, you see that Jerusalem here, I showed you maps that they painted the world as a big circle. They would put Jerusalem in dead center, the belly butts and the navel of the world. Which, of course, as far as I'm convinced, Jerusalem is the Jerusalem we see today is actually the navel of the world. But you can't look at the north. You can't look at the North Pole, and so that would be like the face, right? If the sun and the moon go around it, that would be like right here. That would be where the North Pole is. My belly button would be where Jerusalem is. But they painted it also as a circle like this. You actually see some Knights Templars there chasing off some bad guys saying, "Get out of our city. We're guarding this place now." So just the other day, because I told you I'm doing field research, I have hundreds and thousands of pictures at this point. It's going to take me a long time to get through all this. But I was really excited to go to the Temple Church in London. This was their headquarters in London, put in place by the original Templars themselves. And you could see here that they created circular churches. They did this to mimic this building right here, because it's circular, as well as the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and their ideas of the circular Jerusalem. And of course, it plays in with the Zodiac as well. When you go into this church, and I'll have much more to say this in other studies. Once again, you look up and you see the dome in the sky right there. There's actually, you could argue whether there's 6 gates or 12 gates there. It's kind of interesting. Here's another thing right here. I just saw this on, I'm taking pictures everywhere. I saw this on the London Underground. This is a labyrinth, and labyrinths most of the time are circular as well. Now, I've done studies on this. I have a paper on this. Go read it for yourselves. The difference between labyrinths and mazes is that mazes are there to confuse you, disorient you, make you lost. Labyrinths are there to discover yourself. It is completely different. They're not the same. And labyrinths are inventions of the Middle Ages. So let's get back into Virgo now that we've kind of looked at the zodiac in the sky, how that plays out with New Jerusalem, prophecy. This is what we read in Genesis chapter 3. Wow, what happened to my print here? Huh. This must have happened just when I made this PDF copy just now. Interesting. I made a PDF copy like 5 minutes before I went live, and I kind of messed everything up. All right. Just 3:15 says, I will also cause antagonism between you and the woman, and between your progeny and her progeny. He shall wound your head, and you shall wound his heel. So the prophecy is, of course, with a woman. I believe this is speaking of Virgo, and I think all the ancient societies understood this. So we see here given to you from Alamy. You can go purchase this yourself for like $30-$40 or more. Could be hundreds. I'm not really sure. They're pretty steep in price. Virgo is represented as a woman with a branch in her right hand and some ears of corn or wheat rather than tares in her left hand. Isn't that interesting? The branch has my fancy because this is describing a Betula. We could go into the 144,000, guys. When we read Hebrew Revelation, the word that is used there is Betula. The 144,000, the men are never once described in all of Hebrew scripture as Betulas. Betulas are specifically women. This upsets people so much because, as I've stated, if the 144,000 are men, then it would be the first time, it would be a new exception to the rule created by John. And he's not. He's referencing the rest of scripture. A Betula is a woman. They are virgins. And one of the things I'm documenting here in Europe, everywhere I see these, I believe they're the 144,000, the ladies all over Europe with the palm branches. They will tell you that the palm branch is for someone who's martyred, which actually is a description, by the way, of the 144,000. Let me jump down here. This is right here, St. Barbara. And since coming into Spain and Portugal, I've seen her all over as well. Her MacGuffin there is the tower, the Migdol. And I'm kind of suspicious that she's a stand-in for Mary Magdalene, whatever. Doesn't really matter. She also has the Grail too, but you often see her with the palm branch. In most of these pictures, she is holding a palm branch, right? She is a Betula. She is a virgin. She was martyred. She's probably one of the 144,000. So anyways, but that's Virgo in the sky, and she is referring to Genesis chapter 3. The name of this sign in the Hebrew is Betula, which means a virgin, and in the Arabic, a branch. The two words are connected, as in Latin, Virgo, which means a virgin, right? So there we have it right there in our sky, the virgin, which everybody denies and says that can't be in the Bible because it's pagan. But it's, apparently Yahweh put a bunch of pagan stuff in our skies. And which in Virga, which means a branch. Another name is Sunbul Arabic, means an ear of corn. In Genesis 3:15, she's presented only as a woman, but in later prophecies, her nationality is defined as being of the stock of Israel, the seed of Abraham, the line of David, and further, she is to be a virgin. There are two prominent prophecies of her. We went through these right here. Isaiah 14, Matthew 123. And then, of course, I understand this is speaking from the Greek. But my point was, and a very long point I've been making, is that they are referring to her as a maiden. Contextually, it's the same thing of marrying age. Virgo contains 110 stars. And let's see, I don't need to read all that. But this is interesting right here. The brightest star in Virgo has an ancient name handed down to us in all the star maps in which the Hebrew word Semek is preserved. It is called in Arabic Al-Zamak, which means the branch. This star is in the ear of corn, which she holds in her left hand, or it could be the wheat. Hence, the star has a modern Latin name, which has almost superseded the ancient one, Spica, which means an ear of corn. But this hides this great truth revealed by its name, Al-Zamak. It foretold the coming of him who should bear this name. The same divine inspiration has, in the written word, 4 times connected it with him. There are 20 Hebrew words translated branch, but only one of them, Semak, is used exclusively of the Messiah. And this word only 4 times. Each of these further connects him with one special account of him given in the Gospels. In Jeremiah, we read, behold, the days come, saith Yahweh, that I will raise unto David a righteous branch. In Zechariah 3:8, it says, behold, I will bring forth my servant, the branch. In Zechariah 6:12, it says, thus speaketh Yahweh of hosts, saying, behold, the man whose name is the branch. In Isaiah 4:2, it says, in that day shall the branch of Yahweh be beautiful and glorious. This is the branch foretold by the star Al-Zamak in the ear of corn. So one of the things he does in Witness of the Stars is just brilliantly shows that we have these constellations, but then there are hundreds and hundreds of stars in these constellations, and the ancients were all naming them different characters that identified with that actual constellation in the zodiac. And it's across the board in all these different ancient nations, and it becomes like it's like not circumstantial evidence anymore. It becomes undeniable that they too have the gospel and the stars. It was all passed down from the Sethite religion. I'll just skip some of this here. So let's get into the hardcore controversial stuff right here. Coma, the woman and child. Now, she is actually, so within the zodiac, within the 12, you have these other constellations as well, and the woman and child is there identifying again the woman, Virgo, the Virgin, right? And so they're right here, you have the Madonna and the child. You guys all know those portraits, and you guys know how it relates back to Semiramis and Tammuz, or Isis and Horus, and everything is pagan, right? And they were just ripping off these mystery religions, or was it actually reversed? This is actually what I found just yesterday in the British Museum. I took hundreds of pictures there. I was trying to take everything I could, just document everything. As you could see, I was having a hard time because it was behind this glass, and so there was the reflections from the light. I was trying to take different angles to get it, but this was like thousands of years old, pre-Hellenistic time. This is back around the time of Moses, probably. And there you see clearly the Madonna and child, Isis, milking Horus, her child, on her lap, which would then be assumedly mimicked by many Christian, Catholic, Orthodox artists during the Middle Ages. The first constellation of Virgo explains that this coming branch will be a child, and that he should be the desired of all nations. The ancient name of this constellation, so this is right here. This is Coma, the woman and child. This is the first constellation. The ancient name of this constellation is Coma, the desired or the longed for. The child is the longed for, coming forth from the Virgin. You getting it? You getting the connection here? Before even Isaiah made the prophecy, we have the word used by the Holy Spirit in this very connection. And is this what book of the Bible is that? The desire of all nations shall come forth. I don't know. The ancient zodiacs pictured this constellation as a woman with a child in her arms. The word here, Abu Mazar, an Arabian astronomer of the 8th century, says, there arises in the first decan, as the Persians, Chaldeans, and Egyptians, and the two Hermes and Ascalius teach, a young woman whose Persian name denotes a pure virgin, right? So this is no longer an issue of the Septuagint. This is an issue of the Persians, the Chaldeans, Egyptians, all over. They were identifying that this woman with this child in the constellations was a virgin, sitting on a throne. Well, there's where you get your Queen of Heaven right there. That's another topic. Nourishing an infant boy. The boy, I say, having a Hebrew name by some nations called Hisu, with the signification Isa, in which the Greek is called Christos. So this would all be the pagan tongue, all referring back to Yeshua, Messiah. But this picture is not found in any of the modern maps of the stars. There we find today a woman's wig. So I want to point this out if people are going to fact check this, right? They're like, no, you're making this up. So by the 19th century, this was gone when he wrote this book. And it appears that Berenice, the wife of Ptolemy III, king of Egypt in the 3rd century BC, when her husband once went on a dangerous expedition, vowed to consecrate her fine head of hair to Venus if he returned in safety. Her hair, which was hung up in the temple of Venus, was subsequently stolen, and to comfort Berenice, Conon, an astronomer of Alexandria, gave it out that Jupiter had taken it up and made it a constellation. So almost a humorous story, but apparently they, they got rid of the constellation, maybe with the birth of Christendom. I don't really know. And they erased her up in the heavens and they made her a wig. So that's the story on that right there. Why you no longer find it. This is a good example of how the meaning of other constellations have been perverted ignorantly or internationally. Those are Bollinger's words. That fits his whole worldview. I fully agree with it. In this case, as in others, a transition from ancient to more modern languages helped to hide the meaning. There's Coma the Desired right there, charted out. You can see because right here to the right is Virgo, and she's right there, just to her left, right by the palm branch. I don't need to go through all this. Okay, so this is what he writes right here. He says, according to Bollinger, it was in all probability that the constellation of Coma is where the Star of Bethlehem appeared. There was a traditional prophecy, well known in the East, carefully preserved and handed down, that a new star would appear in this sign when he whom it foretold should be born. So the idea here is that, this was doubtless referred to in the prophecy of Balaam, which would thus receive a double fulfillment, first of the little star and also the person to whom it referred. So the idea here, according to Bollinger, is that when the wise men looked up, the star that appeared in Coma here, the desired, and they understood this to be the prophecy they were looking for. And he also goes into different points in history when stars just magically appeared. They just appeared. They weren't there, and then they were. And of course, I'm of the opinion that stars come and go. So this is not a Big Bang Copernican universe that we are seeing light from millions of years ago or billions or however long ago. That they are that stars lose their authority, they could reappear, things like that. There's a lot going up in the heavens. I think that's good for that right now. Man, look what this PDF did. Look how it butchered my boy. Wow. I think I'm going to end the study there tonight. I'm cutting it a little short, but I don't have the time to give it to the Magi. I want to spend a little bit of time on that. And then I also want to talk about Docetism and how it plays out with the incarnation of Messiah and how the early first century Christians actually believed Messiah to be embodied in there. There is a lot of a push recently to say that, at least in my circles and people I talk to, that Messiah was just a normal dude. He was just a man. And then he became the son of God when the Holy Spirit embodied him. And from that point of his baptism going forward, he didn't sin, but he could have transgressed beforehand. And then he didn't sin. And then he was a spotless lamb. And that just, he proved himself. He became, the King of Kings at that time. I wholeheartedly reject that line of thinking. And in fact, I am of the opinion that he is Yahweh himself, and that he is the very one who entered a covenant relationship with Abraham. He brought down the Torah on Mount Sinai, and he came down to earth to fulfill his end of the bargain, even though humanity didn't keep it themselves. I want to talk about that next week and how that plays into Docetism, on the early understanding that that he was kind of he was the appearance of a baby, that his true glory could not be contained in the image of a baby. Now that right there is going to be to modern evangelical thinking, like, whenever something is stated that goes against what's said in the pulpit, all of a sudden the alarms start going off, like, a heresy, heretic alert, when in fact, I'm just going to be reading to you from very, very early texts and saying, okay, you know what? You can disagree with this in your 21st century post-Newtonian mentality if you want. Just keep to your science textbooks and just, go with that. But the early church, which we claim to have a foundation on, this is what they believed. And it was very different than what we believe today. So that being said, I'm looking forward to keeping you guys updated on First of all, let me know if you like this study. I want to go line through Matthew. I want to take my time getting there. You guys know I like to be detail oriented. I don't like to rush through things. And the hardest part, of course, it's easy to start these things. The hardest part is seeing it all the way through. But I want to get all the way through Matthew, and I want to support every single book that Pamela comes out with. When she comes out with a new translation, we want to do a study on it. And of course, I'm going to be keeping you guys updated on my Noel's travels through Europe. This is going to be like another 6 months. And I hope to bring Jenna on week after week. And hopefully she will go through it with me. We'll have some good conversations, a lot of just incredible stuff I'm digging up. Hope you guys have a good, restful Sabbath, whenever that is for you. And I'm looking forward to my Sabbath rest. It has been a gunshot sprint since I have been here in Europe. And I am working hard here. Just to end it, please, if Yah puts it on your hearts, please become a ministry supporter. We need ministry supporters, people who want to come along with us and say, yes, Noel, we want more of this research. We want more of your papers. We want to see the Paleo-Hebrew translated, not just a Bible where there are Paleo-Hebrew names. We have those. We're talking about the entire Bible translated through the Paleo-Hebrew. And this is a long process, and we need you guys. Yah has been amazing to support us month after month. We are completely dependent on him every single month. And like I said, last month was the first month where in a while, it was the third month in the history of this ministry, we were able to pay Pamela the full amount of what we want to pay her, and we pay Rebecca every month. I think that's all I wanted to say. So there's a number of ways you can do that. GoFundMe. There's I put up different ways. Patreon is really the place to go, because if you become a ministry supporter with Patreon, whatever you give us every month, we match that by giving you a coupon or a gift certificate, whatever you want to call it, the same amount you can spend in our store to get this book or the many others we put out, because we are book publishers. So if you give 5, 15, 20, 30, 50, 75, 100, 150, whatever, every month, you will get that same amount back. And the good thing, guys, even if you're like, yeah, I already have that book. Well, you know what? Buy it for your friend, buy it for your mom, buy it for your family, whatever, your coworkers. Get them some of these books too of ancient knowledge. Put it into like a library, whatever. There's a lot of ways you could, help, use it to spread the love around to other people and expand this ministry. Love you guys. Let's do this again sometime.
If you had the power to go back in time and choose to give into a ministry that would effectively change the way the world sees an idea, would you do it? I think the answer is yes. Well, you don't have to go back in time. What you can do is right now, you can click the link below and give to the Paleo-Hebrew translation effort. What is this? Well, Paleo-Hebrew is the ancient form of Hebrew. When you write Hebrew out, you build it. If I said H2O, you know that I mean water. That's what building a language is. Japanese, Chinese, Korean, they all have this idea, even Paleo-Babylonian, the Paleo-Egyptian, the hieroglyphics, petroglyphs. They have this idea that when you put a certain group of pictures together, it means a word. That's what Paleo-Hebrew was. That's what Paleo-Hebrew is. Pamela Glasgow is changing the way that we view the scriptures. You can help. You can go ahead and click the link below and find out how you can change your life, your study of the Bible, your children's life, your children's children, and everybody the whole world, man, the whole world can benefit greatly from this. And you can have the power to help right now. All you got to do is click it and give. And it's good to give. What does the Bible say? James says, what is good religion? That I defile not myself with the world, then I give to the widows and the orphans. Well, we're working on number 1. Sorry, number 2. Well, both actually. We're working on not defiling ourselves. So hopefully you're working on that too. I'm working on that. But we can give to the widows, and the widows. This is she's right there, and she's doing a work for you, for us, for the whole world, and we have the power to effectively change the paradigm of how we've seen the scriptures from time immemorial to tomorrow. So do that. All right, be blessed and not stressed.